This is just a quick tutorial for how to set up a chart using Word. You can both use this chart in a manuscript as well as in a poster. I'm going to kind of talk briefly about both. The main thing is to just kind of click around and explore a little bit, but this is how to set up a chart for an interaction specifically, and I'm going to kind of show you how I do this. And as a reminder, an interaction effect would be where you have a two-way ANOVA with two independent variables, and you want to show what happens at one level of one independent variable and one level of another. So in order to create this chart, I'm going to go into Insert, Chart. When we're dealing with independent groups, I typically like working with columns. I think columns more clearly delineate that they are separate groups. If I'm dealing with something like a regression analysis where I've got things on a continuum, a line might work a little bit better, but for now we're going to go with columns for independent groups. So this is kind of the default that it sets up, and what you have to do first is drag over the box to encapsulate the grid of the different groups that you have. In this particular case, I'm assuming you have a 2x2 design. Some of you have slightly different designs from this. You might have a 2x3 design or a 2x4 design. In this particular case, if I have a 2x2 design, I'm going to drag this over to represent this grid of 2 here and 2 here. If I had a 2x3 design, I might choose to do it this way or this way. So you can kind of see how that might look with different styles of designs. But for now, we're doing a 2x2 design. I don't need these, so I'm just going to delete them. All right, so now that I've got this starting grid, I'm going to go ahead and label everything so I'm sure that I'm putting the right values in the right places. This is a recreation of a figure that I have for groups that were exposed to people who were either non-moralizing or moralizing. They took a moral position on something in a scenario, and then were later got caught cheating or stealing. The moralizing was about cheating, by the way. And then I would put in my means for my 4 different condition combinations. You can find these in your descriptives of your two-way ANOVA. So for example, for this one, the non-moralizing groups were roughly similar in terms of cheating and stealing. The moralizing cheating group, people who said don't cheat and then got caught cheating, had much higher scores. And the people who said don't cheat and got caught stealing had similar scores to the non-moralizing group. So these are our means that we're working with for our chart. And now that I've got that input, I can go ahead and make this a little bit more APA style. So let's go ahead and noodle around and figure out ways to get this chart to do what we want. We want a few different things. We want there to be an axis over here, a line right here. We want this axis to be labeled. We want to get rid of things that we don't need and fiddle with the legend in order to get it looking more like it should. Also, APA style has a few other quirks. It doesn't have lines in the plot area, and it doesn't have a box around the figure. So let's go ahead and clean this up a little bit. First, we're going to get rid of something we don't need in form of the chart title. We're also going to get rid of things that we don't need in form of the lines. We don't want grid lines. We do, however, want a line to be around the plot area, which will work just great for our purposes. And we don't want that big box around our data set. This is just, once again, one of those quirks. I'm going to go into chart area and ask it for no borderline. One of those quirks of APA style. This box is fine. The big box is not necessarily APA style. And then I want to fiddle with the legend and the axis title. So in order to do that, I'm going to actually go into chart design over here and ask it to add chart element. So the first thing I'm going to do is ask it to add the legend off to the right. And the second thing I'm going to do is ask it to provide an axis title on the primary vertical axis. Now, you can also choose to label the x-axis below. That's not necessary. In fact, usually it isn't. In this case, it doesn't need an a label, so I wouldn't bother with the x-axis unless it's truly necessary. I want to put a box around my legend, so I'm going to go to Legend Options and ask it for a line. And then I've got to do two more things to make this APA style. First, I need to change the, I need to add the figure title. I'm going to do that in Times New Roman 12-point font. I'm going to make sure that my title is descriptive and includes my two independent variables and my dependent variable. I'm going to italicize figure 1. And I'm going to go ahead and also make this grayscale if I wanted to put this in a manuscript. It needs to be black and white. So I'd go into Chart Design, change colors, and ask it to be grayscale. This is what an APA style figure would look like for an interaction for a manuscript. If I wanted to make this a figure for a poster, there's a couple of different ways I would handle this. So first of all, it doesn't have to be grayscale. And I would pretty much just take a screenshot of this and make it into a picture, because it's a lot easier to work with in picture format than it is if you insert a chart into the PowerPoint slide, because the PowerPoint slide dimensions are really funky and there's a lot of text boxes. It's a lot easier to just insert in a picture. So I would basically take a screenshot of this and then trim it so that it was just the relevant areas that I wanted, and then paste it into my poster. That's kind of how I would handle that if I was dealing with putting this into a poster format. And that's how you create an APA style figure to put into a manuscript or to put into a poster.